Entertainment Esquire. Today we'll be discussing celebrity lawsuits in the context of the 50 Cent Diddy Reckoning documentary. Let's get started. So Netflix released just this month a documentary with 50 Cent, Diddy's nemesis, a documentary about his life and a little bit about the trial. And it's been ruffling feathers, particularly in Diddy's camp, because the majority of the footage, wait for it, is Diddy's footage. And so what we'll be discussing today is, was this footage obtained legally, i.e. contractually? Was it stolen? Can Netflix and 50 Cent and the other directors and producers be sued over this footage if it was not obtained legally? That's what we're going to dive into today. And a little bit about what the documentary discussed in terms of some potential legal issues that Diddy may be facing outside of the 4-year sentence with 1 year served that he's currently serving. So let's dive into the contractual issues of this footage. So you see all this footage of Diddy running around a week before he's arrested in New York, in his hotel with his family, and you're wondering, how did this footage get in 50 Cent's documentary, of all documentaries? Well, allegedly, the Netflix camp and the 50 Cent camp has given the press a kind of, cookie cutter statement that it was obtained legally. Diddy's videographer has come out and given statements to Variety magazine and a couple other magazines to say that while he was away, allegedly, a freelancer gave this footage to them. Now, did he give it to him for payment? Did he just give it to him because he did not, he just wanted to give it to them? We don't know if there was a payment in exchange. But whether there was a payment exchanged or not, if the actual videographer who was away on vacation was the true owner of the footage, then technically the footage is unauthorized. They were not supposed to have it in their documentary. So where does 50 Cent enter this picture? He is one of the executive producers of this project. Again, he is also giving this canned statement that it was the footage of Diddy's intimate moments in his hotel around the city a week before he was arrested was obtained legally. And so they're not really giving us details like who they exactly received it from, how much payment, because technically we, the public, don't need to know that information, right? That's confidential information. It would only come out if Diddy's camp actually sued through discovery, how they exactly obtained it and was money exchanged for the footage. Now, the footage, ironically, does not actually, in my opinion, hurt Diddy. It does not hurt his appeal for his current case, because the footage literally just has him greeting people and, and some people say, well, some of the footage has him talking to his lawyers and that could hurt him. I personally don't think it can hurt him because he's only discussing a PR strategy as it relates to, the court of public opinion that you have to deal with before you get to trial. So before you get to trial, you have to know what the public perception of you in your case is, because while it's not supposed to taint the jury, it typically does. And so he's discussing a PR strategy, like, how do we get our side out? How do we get our message out? To me, that's not hurting his case. I think any person, even if you weren't high profile, would be doing that with your attorney. So the irony is, although the footage may have not been authorized, right, like legally obtained, because again, allegedly the videographer who was on vacation is saying, well, I didn't give anyone permission to sell it for me or give it away freely. Even if it is unauthorized, I don't think the footage hurts Diddy. That's the irony. I don't think the footage hurts Diddy. Now, what does hurt Diddy? Let's dig into what does hurt Diddy. And before we dig into that, I just wanted to mention that, yes, he can sue. He can sue for invasion of privacy, use of his likeness in the documentary. These are the things he can sue for if he would like to. So what do I find legally troubling about this documentary? Because certainly, as I mentioned before, it's not Diddy's intimate footage. I find it troubling that this documentary explores and reopens the cases of Biggie Smalls' murder and Tupac's murder. To me, that is the most troubling part of this documentary, because they really lay out with witnesses and certain pieces of evidence that you haven't seen before, like call logs and payments and, like I said, different witnesses, that when you put it all together, it paints a pretty convincing and compelling argument that he purposely had Biggie in Los Angeles, and that Biggie himself did not want to actually be there. It clearly paints that. And then it further tries to allege that he actually wanted him there so that he could be shot. And we don't know, obviously, if that second part is true. But what they do, I think, lay out a good argument for is that Biggie Smalls definitely did not want to be in Los Angeles the weekend he was killed. He wanted to be in Europe promoting his album. So I think they proved that. Did they prove that he actually wanted Biggie murdered? I'm not sure if they were able to do that, but they definitely put it out there. And then they take it a step further with Tupac. They're like, with Tupac, there is an open criminal case of one of the three people that were actually in the car that shot at Tupac. I believe his name is Keefe D. He is saying that he's not saying who actually pulled the trigger, but he's absolutely saying he was in the car that shot at Tupac, and that he was supposed to be paid $1 million, $500,000 for Tupac, $500,000 for Suge Knight, and that because Suge Knight survived, he wasn't going to get the other $500,000, but he is still to this day waiting for his $500,000 for making sure Tupac was killed, and that some partial payment or some sort of payment went through someone else to give to him, and he just never received it. And he stands on that. Now, he won't say who actually pulled the trigger, his family member or the other person in the car, but he definitely says he was in the car, and that Diddy helped plan it. So that's a conspiracy charge. In addition to conspiracy as it relates to Tupac's murder, obviously he could be charged with first-degree murder because it would be premeditated, right? This was planned. This is not manslaughter where it happened in the moment. So this could be a whole separate criminal case. Keefe D is already facing charges for the shooting by being in the car. It's called felony murder. So even if you're not in the car, if you're part of the planning and someone is killed and a felony, i.e. in this case a murder, happens in the commission of that said plan, then everyone goes down. So you don't have to actually pull the trigger. So in this case, Diddy wasn't physically there. Diddy didn't pull the trigger. But if he in fact helped plan this and this was like a murder for hire, absolutely this would be first degree murder. Absolutely he would be getting a conspiracy charge. So to me, that is what Diddy should be concerned about. That this documentary has essentially laid out additional facts, witnesses, and supporting proof that Tupac's death was a murder for hire. Again, going back to Biggie, I don't think they did a really good job of proving that he wanted Biggie killed. But something as it relates to Tupac and Biggie I thought was interesting is that when they both died, it seems like, or not even seems like, Diddy shot to fame as an artist, not a producer, not the person behind the scenes. And the way that the documentary lays it out is that he was always jealous of his artists, whether it be Biggie or, competing artists like Tupac. Like, he always craved the spotlight, even from being a small child. And so by them actually both dying, it kind of allowed him to I don't want to say take their place, because clearly he can't be Biggie and Tupac, but it kind of allowed him to rise to more stardom as an actual artist. He took the Rolling cover, magazine cover that Biggie would have had if he had survived. He was performing the song I'll Be Missing You with Sting. So he really rose to stardom as an artist when both Biggie and Tupac died. I think that is undebatable. Now, did he want them both dead so that could happen? Again, it's debatable. But I do think the documentary did do a very good job of kind of laying that out. I also think the documentary did a good job of laying out a little bit about how he grew up. Interesting enough, they didn't really dig into the case, and I think it's because, and the extent they did dig into the case was the jurors' perspectives. They did have 2 jurors speak on why they felt like convicting him on only one of the charges, which was the transportation of prostitution, was the correct thing to convict him on, that they weren't convinced that the sex trafficking of Cassie and the other girlfriends, and they were not convinced of the RICO charges. They were not convinced. The jurors laid out why they were not convinced. So we did get a little insight to what the jurors were thinking. I think they did a good job with that. But yeah, they didn't really dive into the case beyond what the jurors spoke about. Interesting enough, and I'm not sure why he did this, but allegedly 50 Cent's child's mom was one of the prosecution's star witnesses, right? Jane. And so it's interesting that he does a documentary about Diddy and he does not mention that his child's mom was an actual victim in this case. It's interesting that he leaves that part out. But perhaps he leaves that part out because he does not want to come off biased. Maybe he leaves it out because he is still hurt by that. Hence why he took the time to go out of his way to do a whole documentary about Diddy. As much as 50 Cent has says that this documentary is not personal, it is clearly personal. But I also think it is professional because he definitely made a lot of money. This documentary took the place of #1 spot and beat out Stranger Things, which is like one of the #1 shows on Netflix ever. So he definitely got his personal payback, but he also got his professional payback. So what's next for Diddy? For his sake, I hope they're not using this documentary as the blueprint for a first-degree murder charge and a conspiracy charge as it relates to the pending trial of Keffe D in the Tupac shooting. I'm praying that they are not using this documentary and the evidence that was presented in this documentary as the blueprint to charge him now as a co-defendant or a co-conspirator to the pending Tupac trial that's happening next year with Keffe D. They certainly use the civil complaint of Cassie to create a whole RICO charge, hence why he's even sitting where he's sitting today. So it would not surprise me that prosecutors would use evidence and statements from other things like documentaries or other cases as a way to create new charges against Diddy. Because in their minds, Diddy got away scot-free with 4 years, 1 year served. Speaking of which, that is what we know is next for Diddy. His appeal trial starts next spring. Both parties have already started to submit statements to the judge about this appeal. And so, yes, starting this spring, we will be back in the courtroom with Diddy's appeal on his transportation of prostitution charges. We'll keep you posted on that. In the meantime, thank you for watching The Entertainment Esquire. You can find me on all streaming platforms at The Entertainment Esquire, on YouTube at The Entertainment Esquire, and on social media at The Entertainment ESQ. Until next time, everyone, take care. Thank you for listening to The Entertainment Esquire. Find our show on YouTube at The Entertainment Esquire and on social media at The Entertainment ESQ. Need a legal consultation? Need a lawyer referral or legal resources for your business or legal matters? Then visit us at theentertainmentesq.com. Until next time, thank you for listening.